Yo, 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 what up, YouTube? I forgot. I gotta start doing intros, not just saying the video that I'm about to watch. I gotta be a little more entertaining. But anyways, all right. Next video. From the Den of Nerds. Josh, my crazy. Oh, I can't make the whole thing right there. All right. From the Den of Nerds, my crazy RDJ Doctor Doom theory just got confirmed.
Fans, there's a new leak out there that fully explains Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. Oh, and by the way, it says that my crazy ass theory from back in the day is actually correct. Let's fucking go! Yes! Let's go over the new leak. Let's talk about all of the evidence that there was for this along the way, because if this is real, I called it a long ass time ago, and I'm absolutely going to demand that every single person out there gives me fucking credit. So many people thought it was absolutely insane. So many people thought it would be way too crazy for Marvel to do, and yet very good evidence is starting to pile up that this is exactly what Kevin Feige had planned. I'm just gonna read this whole thing to you and then we'll talk about it, okay? So it says here, He Who Remains created Earth 616, a sacred and controlled timeline to hide the true history of the multiverse. Victor Von Doom was considered too dangerous, so He Who Remains rewrote him into the 616 timeline. The rewriting...
All right, hold on. Come on, like kind of spaced out. Don't worry, this is the only time we do this.
This is exactly what Kevin Feige had planned. I'm just going to read this whole thing to you and then we'll talk about it, okay? So it says here, He Who Remains created Earth 616, a sacred and controlled timeline to hide the true history of the multiverse. Victor Von Doom was considered too dangerous, so He Who Remains rewrote him into the 616 timeline. The rewriting turned Doom into Tony Stark with the same mind altered and a new identity and life as a hero. So he's Doom in that timeline, rewritten. He has the same body, the same mind, but he's now adopted by the Starks and has the identity of Tony Stark. New identity and life as a hero. Yeah. Tony Stark.
He was raised by the Starks. He grew up with different ideals. I'm trying to say.
Always felt like he didn't fit in with his family because his real life had been stolen. Those feelings of not belonging are echoes of Doom's original identity trying to awaken. The time travel Tony used in Endgame was deliberately allowed by He Who Remains. He Who Remains permitted those time travels because he needed a variant of Loki to survive outside of his control. The survival of that Loki variant was part of He Who Remains' plan to prepare for future events. The main purpose of He Who Remains was not permanent peace, but to prepare for a multiversal war against the Kang variants who betrayed him. When Tony Stark dies, a key piece of He Who Remains' control disappears. With the death of He Who Remains, the barriers containing realities break, and all versions of Doom come back into existence. Among those versions, the Doom who fought and lost in the multiversal war regains his memory. Upon recovering his memory, that Doom feels or regains his memory.
That's not bad. I hate AI, but that's not bad. Oh shit. That's not bad. I like how real it looks. I don't like the suit. Well, it's not that bad. I don't like the fingerless glove shit, but never mind. Suit's not that bad. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is like how real it looks. It looks like RDJ.
Upon recovering his memory, that Doom feels humiliated for having been turned into a puppet of He Who Remains. That humiliation becomes his driving force. Doom doesn't just want revenge. He wants to rebuild the multiverse his own way. Okay, that's pretty crazy, and let me try to break it down. Like, let's go through some of the things that are brought up here, and I'll actually explain the evidence for them, because again, I've had this theory for literally a year. The main thing you got to keep in mind is that we already know for sure that the sacred timeline is indeed a false reality. The way He Who Remains tells it, there was a multiversal war, he harnesses the power of Goliath, and then he ends the multiversal war and he creates the sacred timeline. Now, the original understanding of this was like, maybe he goes back before there was a multiversal war and he resets time itself, and maybe that's still what it is. But remember, all the variants in the TVA come from different realities. It's very likely they are from the original multiverse, actually. But anyway, the point is, we know that the actual real version of the multiverse before the multiversal war is unknown to us. All we know as the audience is the Infinity Saga and essentially an entire story that took place in a false reality created by He Who Remains. Now, in this leak, it says that Victor Von Doom was considered too dangerous, and so he was removed from the sacred timeline. Now, that appears to be real. Like, that's something that Alex Perez has hinted at before. It's even potentially something that's going on with the X-Men. Alex once said that Marvel had a plan to have the X-Men and Doctor Doom actually be the main focus of the saga after Secret Wars. Like, this was before they went away from Kang. This was before all of the stuff with Jonathan Majors. And that original...
I can believe that. I feel like they, since that shit went down with the actor that played Kang, Jonathan Majors, I feel like they had to push up using Doctor Doom. So they pushed it up to Doomsday and Secret Wars. I feel like he probably would have showed up in Secret Wars and the Kang Dynasty before it was Avengers Doomsday, it was Avengers Kang Dynasty. I feel like he probably would have still showed up, Doctor Doom. And I still feel like it probably would have been played by RDJ. But I feel like they would have really saved him for after Secret Wars. And for the Secret Wars that was gonna be before, that they went down with the actor, I feel like it was gonna be um well, there were reports that it was always gonna be Doctor Doom, but low key, I really don't believe that. I'm trying to say, like, I believe that they were thinking about Doctor Doom, but for after Secret Wars, I think they were gonna adapt Secret Wars in their own way. I think they were gonna make Kang Doom. I'm trying not make him actually Doom, but they were what Doom was in the 2015 Secret Wars. I feel like that's what they were gonna make Kang. So, but yeah, that's just me. But yeah, anyways, I felt like that's why they had to really use Doctor Doom now.
Version, what was going to happen is this was going to be revealed, and it was going to be revealed that, like, the whole reason that we didn't have X-Men or Fantastic Four or Victor Von Doom in the sacred 616 timeline is because He Who Remains created a fake timeline and removed them or altered events of reality to make it so they didn't show up at the same time. Now, that, by the way, is a super meta thing, and I really want you to hear me on this, because meta stuff is like Kevin Feige's favorite.
But it makes sense, at least to me.
Thing to do. I mean, if you think about it, the whole Ralph Boner thing, that's a meta thing. Like, you don't even understand that joke or whatever it was unless you understand that Evan Peters was playing the character of Quicksilver in the Fox X-Men universe, and now he's being brought into the MCU as Quicksilver, and that's crazy. But that's meta. Like, that literally only works because we know that that was going to be a thing. And it's the same thing with Tom Cruise Iron Man. I mean, Tom Cruise Iron Man is a huge rumor. It might still even be in Doomsday. And the whole reason that's crazy is because Tom Cruise was originally out for the role of Iron Man. I mean, Feige brings John Krasinski back, or I guess brings him into the MCU as Reed Richards, simply because that was this deep cut thing that fans have been making art about for years. It's meta. He loves to reference that kind of stuff, and he loves to just, like, do stuff for the fans. And we also know that Kevin has always wanted a Marvel Cinematic Universe with all the characters together, just like Marvel Comics. And we know this because he has tried many different times throughout the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to have that cohesion. The Osborn Tower was supposed to be in the skyline of the original Avengers movie. The original Avengers movie had a post-credit scene where Nick Fury references Spider-Man and the X-Men mutants, right?
Well, he said the original Avengers film.
Credit scene where Nick Fury of the original Avengers movie. The original Avengers movie had a post-credit.
No. He means Iron Man. Iron Man 1. Search, if I don't believe me, search it up. Iron Man 1 alternate deleted post-credit scene. Search that up. He's gonna say what it said right now, but I think he got it confused because that wasn't in Avengers. That wasn't a deleted scene from Avengers. That was a deleted scene from Iron Man.
Credit scene where Nick Fury references Spider-Man and the X-Men mutants, right? So he was always trying to actually.
Matter of fact, let me just share right now. I'll just go back to this video. This shit right here.
Have a vault, and we pulled some things out of that vault that we said we'll never show this to anybody. Put it away. We're bringing them out. We're putting them on this disc, and I'm about to.
Kevin Feige presents alternate post-credit scene from Iron Man.
To show you a deleted scene that has never been seen by anyone before right now. Thank you again so much, and enjoy.
Set. And action. As if gamma accidents, radioactive bug bites, and assorted mutants weren't enough. I have to deal with a spoiled brat who doesn't play well with others and wants to keep all his toys to himself.
Who the hell are you?
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
Well, what are we avenging?
Whatever the hell we want.
That's crazy. Okay, that's when Kevin Feige wanted to merge with the Fox X-Men universe. Little did he know they were gonna be bigger than that. Little did little Kevin Feige know he was gonna. Oh my God, pop off is not even the word. They literally changed cinema.
Fans, there's a new leak out there that fully explains.
Fuck, where was I?
Right? So he was always. The original Avengers movie had a post-credit scene where Nick Fury references Spider-Man and the X-Men, mutants, right? So he was always trying to actually have all of them together, and he does get Spider-Man into the MCU through that crazy contract with Sony and Amy Pascal. So you can kind of see that he's always wanted to do what he's about to do after Secret Wars. But what it feels like he has done, Kevin, and maybe Parliament, like their storytelling group basically, has decided that they're going to take the state of the industry, meaning Marvel sold all the licenses out in the 90s. They couldn't get them all back when they started the studio. Everything was fractured. And we're going to take that idea and we're going to make it canon. And it's going to be very meta because essentially these evil corporate controlling figures removed characters from the Marvel universe and made it not as cool. And so that's what happened in real life with business people. But Kevin decided we're going to do that in the actual canon. And we're going to have Kang and He Who Remains be that figure that removed everything. I hope you kind of get what I'm saying there. It's a little bit of a weird point, but as some
I hope y'all get it too. If y'all don't, just rewind the video.
That studied Kevin Feige for almost a decade at this point, I can tell you for sure this is something he really likes to do. It's one of his sensibilities as a producer, and I would venture to say that this whole RDJ Doctor Doom thing is really about that. It is about taking the actual real world explanation for why all the Marvel characters weren't actually together and putting it into the actual story in a meta way. Now, getting into specifically Tony Stark and the Doctor Doom variant being Tony Stark, we know for sure that this Victor Von Doom character has nothing to do with Tony Stark, okay? That was in the Discord leaks that all the scoopers have access to. And I'm actually gonna make a point here because maybe you noticed, if you're super plugged in like I am, My Time to Shine Hello came out and said she doesn't believe this leak. I legitimately think she is wrong, and I will explain why, and it has to do with what I was just saying. Because in that Discord leak where Shine, Daniel, RPK, Alex Prez, this is where like all of those people get all of their info. The leak very specifically says that RDJ's Doctor Doom has nothing to do with Tony Stark. It does not say that Tony Stark has nothing to do with Victor Von Doom. I personally think this is a big misdirection because for all intents and purposes, RDJ's Doctor Doom is going to be traditional Doctor Doom. We've heard that a lot. Kevin Feige's talked about that. Russo's have talked about. Daniel RPK has reported this. He's traditional Doctor Doom. He's not a Tony Stark variant, right? And so that's what I think the leaker's source told them. That's why the leaker's source said that
Oh, them shit's Ray-Bans? All right, I see you, Josh. I see you, Josh. Okay. I don't know, them shit's Ray-Bans.
Von Doom has nothing to do with Tony Stark, but I think it's a word game because technically Tony Stark has a lot to do with Victor Von Doom in this scenario. It says here in this leak that the feelings of not belonging are echoes of Doom's original identity trying to awaken. The time travel Tony used in Endgame was deliberately allowed by He Who Remains to get a Loki outside of time. Now let's first break that down. Let's break down both parts of that. So we do know that RDJ's Tony Stark had a lot of issues with his family, okay? And, you know, there's the whole scene in Civil War where he's building the barf technology to kind of try to have some closure because he was an asshole to his parents and they died one night and he didn't say goodbye to his dad, and it like was really, really rough, right? So what this leak is suggesting is that it will be revealed in Doomsday that a lot of those feelings, and honestly probably a lot of the sort of dark proclivities that our RDJ Tony Stark had, are because he was actually Victor Von Doom, right? And Alex Perez recently said something that I think ties into this. So just walk with me on this. Alex Perez recently said that in the Multiverse of Madness movie, when Stephen Strange says to Reed Richards that, hey, didn't you guys chart in the 60s when, you know, he hears of the Fantastic Four? Alex suggested that the reason Doctor Strange has that vague memory of them being a pop band in the 60s is because it is an echo of the actual memories that he has of when they were all in the same universe and when the Fantastic Four went and they were astronauts in the 60s and they got their power. What that implies...
I love that theory. I fucking love that theory. Like, the reason, like, it sounds wild and it sounds far-fetched, but if you really think about it, it's not. You know what I'm trying to say? It makes sense. It makes sense. But just because it makes sense doesn't mean that's what's gonna be. I'm just saying that that theory, I like it. I love it. I love that shit.
Is that echoes of the memories from the original version of the multiverse are still out there in these characters, and that would be an example of that with Stephen Strange. But might we get an example of how the character of Tony Stark had many different moments where those echoes, those memories of him actually being Victor Von Doom were starting to kind of arrive?
And why, I don't know if we're gonna say this because I haven't watched the video before, but and it will make sense why this iteration of the Marvel Universe is why Tony Stark is the reason why Ultron is created. You know what I'm trying to say? Because he had that in him. He wanted to be like not the ruler, but he wanted, like, I don't know. He wanted to suit the armor of the world. That's what Doctor Doom wants basically for Latveria. You know what I'm trying to say? So that it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to you, completely fine. I don't blame you. It won't. It's not going to for everybody. But for those who do agree with me and agree with Josh, eh, dude.
Now, the whole stuff with Loki's really interesting because it did kind of explain this in the Loki show. Like, this isn't actually too surprising. Loki show kind of says this already. He Who Remains explains that he needed to find Loki's to be the outside of his control thing. Like, he literally says that there's this moment where the script, they pass the moment where he knows everything and it's all about Loki. But then again, that's a part of a script in season 2. So it's really implied that He Who Remains needed Loki to be outside of time for some purpose to prepare for the multiversal war. Now, another thing I'll say about this that's so interesting, in season 2 of Loki, He Who Remains says, my variants are already out there, which is interesting. I don't think he's saying that they've already appeared because you stopped me, but it could be that. I actually think what he's saying is they've always been out there. I never actually removed them. Because if you look at this image of the Sacred Timeline, and this here is from Quantumania, and it's the Kang who we imagine becomes He Who Remains, right? The guy that gets exiled in Quantumania. But if you look at this right here, what is this? This is the multiverse underneath, and then a timeline, the Sacred Timeline, removed from the multiverse, and it is being gardened, right? It is being pruned, and he's not allowing it to expand. I think the pruning word is very specific for a reason, because it eventually leads to Loki and the tree, right? And the branches and all this sort of stuff. And this is actually stuff that's in Endgame. Cap talks about trimming the branches when he gets on the time platform at the end of the film. Anyway, the point I'm making is when you go back to Loki season 1, as He Remains is explaining the multiverse, he explains that universes are stacked on top of each other. And when you see that, it's very similar to what Kang the Conqueror shows Janet in Quantumania, meaning the universes are stacked on top of each other. But this one in particular, the Sacred Timeline, is different than all the other ones that are stacked on top of it. This is the one that He Who Remains isolated from the rest of them and controlled for a very specific reason, so that he would have a contingency to win the next multiversal war. Now, the leak goes on to say that when Tony Stark dies, a key piece of He Who Remains control disappears. With the death of He Who Remains, the barriers containing realities break and all versions of Doom come back into existence. Among those versions, the Doom who fought and lost the multiversal war regains his memories. This, I believe, by the way, and what this would imply is that Tony Stark's death in Endgame somewhat ends one of the levers of control that He Who Remains has. Mostly the lever of saying, this guy is now Tony Stark. I'm going to turn him into Tony Stark, and therefore there's no Doctor Doom. And when that ends, and I don't fully understand why exactly, but when that ends, or maybe it's when He Remains dies or whatever, it allows that control to stop. I believe what this is going to do is it's essentially going to take the sacred timeline that's just existing, and it's going to cause branches. And then one of those branches, probably like way back when Tony Stark is really, really young, one of those branches will probably lead to that Doctor Doom variant realizing who he actually is. And then getting his memories back, realizing that he's actually a variant of the original Doom from the original universe, and then he gets really, really upset. Now, this part's really crazy. I know this is all insane, but just walk with me on this, okay? We have heard a lot of stuff about how Captain America is going to be this huge part of this film, and that RDJ's Doctor Doom wants to kill this freaking Captain America. He wants to kill Steve Rogers. Well, this...
Hey, that's crazy. Congratulations to my boy Chris Evans and his wife. I can't remember her name at the moment, but they just had a baby. Congratulations to my boy, and to her too.
This is why I think this happened. It says here at the end of the leak, upon recovering his memory, that Doom, which again is going to be the main Doctor Doom, feels humiliated for having been turned into a puppet of He Who Remains. That humiliation becomes the driving force. Now, I've talked about this before, because to me, it's the perfect motivation for Doctor Doom. He is going to realize that in the timeline, the Kang the Conqueror character, or He Who Remains, whatever, actually turned him into a hero. So it's not just that somebody controlled the timeline and stopped Victor Von Doom from existing. No, it's actually worse than that. They took the guy that is Victor Von Doom and they turned him into a hero, okay? That is going to really piss off this guy. That's going to really piss off Doctor Doom.
I feel like in the comics too, like if that also happened, I feel like well, I don't know if it did happen. I know Doctor Doom becomes Iron Man in the comics, but that's Victor Von Doom. I'm trying to say. I would believe it. Like if this was to be in the comic books, I would believe it. Doctor Doom would not like that shit. He'll be like, "You made me into a what, bruh? Nah, I ain't fucking with that." I'm trying to say like he's not even gonna go for it, even if it's a variant of himself. He's not gonna go for that. So I would believe that Doctor Doom would get that bad about that. He's literally playing with his life, King.
But here's the thing that I think is going to happen with Steve Rogers. I believe when Steve Rogers gets on that time platform and goes to take all of the stones back, I believe he is going to come to some kind of understanding of the true nature of the multiverse. Basically, I think Steve Rogers is going to realize that this is a fake reality. And in that moment, Steve has the opportunity to actually undo it and to take us back to the real reality. But Steve won't do it. You know why? Because he made a promise to Tony Stark. He made a promise to Tony Stark that they don't lose anything they gain. They just bring people back. That's it. Okay? And so I think Steve actually will know or come to some kind of understanding that technically his friend Tony Stark was actually a Victor Von Doom variant, and this isn't the real reality. And I think Steve's going to make a choice to preserve the fake reality because of the love he had for his friend Tony Stark. And I think that is going to be a betrayal that Victor Von Doom cannot abide. I know this is...
And not just that, it's going to be Chris it's going to be Steve Rogers'. Hey man, he sacrificed so much to get a little bit of peace. What's another little sacrifice going to do? You know what I'm trying to say? But once again, I could see this being true.
Really shocking, and a lot of you probably still don't believe it, right? But let me just take you through a couple of reasons why I've always believed this. And the main one is actually the very first thing that the Russo brothers say about Tony Stark is they get out on stage and Anthony Russo says, due to the unbelievable possibilities of the Marvel multi-universe, we give you the one person who could play Victor Von Doom. They've echoed this in different interviews and whatnot. And so basically like what they're saying is for our story, the only person that could play Victor Von Doom in our story was RDJ. Well, guys, literally what other fucking explanation is there than what I'm talking about? And the other thing that I'll say is, again, it's very meta, and I think that tracks with everything that they like over there. But also, this would be so crazy and so bold. And the Russos did say in various interviews that they wouldn't have come back unless they thought they could actually do something on the level of Endgame and Infinity War. And they didn't want to come back unless they felt like they could actually shock the audience, awe the audience.
And not just for the shock, like have an actual story behind it. Make the shock even more like satisfying.
Do something actually remarkable. And this would be that. This would be a very bold retconning. Now, let me just address the negativity around this, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, this means that our Tony Stark wasn't really Tony Stark.
Oh, bro, he was Tony Stark. Just because he was a Victor Von Doom variant, that's not how he grew up. That's not who he was. He was Anthony Stark. Right, Anthony? Is it right? It doesn't change the fact that that wasn't known. It doesn't change that. It doesn't change the fact that he was our Iron Man and he sacrificed his life for us. Or, their universe. So no, I don't see it like that. No. He was still Tony Stark.
And that sucks because we love our DJ's Tony Stark. Won't this retract from that character? Won't this make me not appreciate that character? Doesn't this diminish the character of RDJ's Tony Stark? And here's where I'm going to tell you no. I actually think it makes it better. And it's because of the concept of nature versus nurture. And actually the idea of identity, the idea of like, who are we as people is a really important thing to all storytelling, but especially within the context of Marvel and the superheroes. And I think by doing this, what Marvel's going to introduce to us is that our Tony Stark, by nature, was Victor Von Doom. He was born Victor Von Doom. He had the proclivities of Victor Von Doom. He might have even had some of the memories of Victor Von Doom. And if this leak is to be believed, then he was being pulled a little bit into the direction of being Victor Von Doom. That's by nature. But by nurture, he became Tony Stark. By choice, by his actions, by his friends, by the growth that he had, by his wife, by his best friend, by his responsibilities, he became Iron Man. And so, I actually think that if they do this, it will lead to a point where the scene at the end of Endgame, where Tony Stark says, I am Iron Man, will actually take on even more meaning, because it is a declaration after everything that he is Iron Man. Again, not because he was born to Howard Stark, but because he was raised by Howard Stark, and because he had the Avengers, and because he made certain choices, and because he met Peter Parker, who actually became a big part of why he became such a good guy, and he met Steve Rogers, and Steve Rogers is a massive part of why he becomes such a good guy. And that is the journey of life. That's what makes a person. And so you could sit back and say, after all is said and done, and maybe we watch Secret Wars, we watch all this stuff, and we're sitting there and we're asking ourselves this question: did this diminish the arc of Tony Stark? I am going to argue most of us at that moment will be saying no. And most of us at that moment will be saying, wow, I can't believe they actually made it even more impactful. And it also opens the door for the next version of Tony Stark, because there's been some rumors that maybe what they're going to do is keep RDJ's Doctor Doom post Secret Wars and instead recast the Iron Man character, bring Tony Stark back, and they're like, oh shit, Tony's back, but it's just like a different person. Maybe it's like actually biological Tony Stark as well. Well, that allows the next version of Tony to be very different than the one we knew, and allow that character to develop and be Tony Stark in their own very unique way. And I actually think that's dope. I think it actually keeps everything on the shelf the way that it is. It's a very bold retcon. It's very wild, but it would be very cool. So there you have it, guys. New leak out there. I don't know that this is real, but I believe that it is real. We will talk more on stream about this week because I think it's so freaking awesome. I mean, what do you guys think of all this? Is it crazy? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And as I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day. And I'll see you in the next video.
Fire video. Fire video. But yeah, I agree with everything. And I expect half of this to be in the Yeah. But yeah, dope theory. Dope theory. Dope theory. But all right. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what y'all think, please. And yeah. Deuces.